Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, that's G-R-A-N, group, at edinarealty.com, or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners.
On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 3-game series against the New York Yankees. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The Twins continue their trend of being unable to beat good teams. That's where we stand. We're going to talk about that a lot throughout this episode, but they drop all three. Really, weren't we just hoping for one, though, in actuality?
We were, and they really could have won game 2 or 3 with some more timely hitting. Another theme. We do have something to look forward to as we look kind of beyond this Pittsburgh series. They're going to drop their City Connect jerseys on June 10th. It's on a Monday here. Are you looking forward to this big reveal?
I am looking forward to it, but I am sort of cautiously optimistic because we look at the Guardians jerseys, and I really like the way that those look. But a listener of the show, I forget if it was Hogs or a listener, they had said that they didn't love the Cleveland City Connect jerseys because they looked like they could just be alternate jerseys. They didn't really look special. And I think part of that is because Nike sort of tries to think about who they're marketing to. In Minnesota, Dan, we're kind of a meat and potatoes type people, so I kind of wonder if they're trying to stay in a pretty narrow box.
Maybe there'll be a hot dish or something with Minnie and Paul with a spoon each or something eating out of it. We can only hope. Speaking of jerseys, the Vikings released, I know we're a Twins podcast, but the Vikings released these all-white Freeze jerseys. I look at this and I think Edgerrin James, Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Indianapolis Colts 15, 20 years ago. What do you see?
They're very white. They're just very white. I kind of think, this is a terrible comparison, but I think Oregon Ducks. Because I think
don't say that. Don't. The Ducks are the hated enemies out here, David.
Okay, well, I know. That was why I didn't really want to say it, but that's exactly what I thought. Because
Ogres
they always
are like onions.
Ugh. Disgusting yellows and greens and pastels, basically.
Oh my... Are you going to let me? Can I talk? Please.
I
knew that was going to be a trigger point, but I didn't think it would be that large of a trigger point. But all I'm saying is that how Nike always sort of provides them with their new jerseys each game or whatever it is. And they looked kind of like that, the new flashy Minnesota Vikings jersey. It looked like a college team's fancy new jersey they got from Nike is what it looked like to me.
We have one other question, David, before we get into this. So I have Googled the world to try to find the getaway day rules, and I can't figure it out. So I'm hoping a listener can point this out. I don't understand why the Yankees get to do things like play a home game before the Twins have to fly to Pittsburgh to play a game tomorrow. Do they have a special rule in New York where the Yankees get to do whatever they want?
Probably. I mean, it's the same with Ohtani, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if he gambles or not. They're not going to charge him with it.
Anyway, that's probably that's an interesting comparison, actually. I didn't. He was cleared of all charges. Can we say that again? We'll come back to that a little bit later. He's an innocent man, David. But let's go ahead and talk about this series one game at a time.
Series recap.
Game 1, Twins lose this game 5-1. There is the heroic return of Royce Lewis, which was a positive, but the Twins still only had 2 hits in this game. One of them was a Royce Lewis home run we'll talk about. The other one was obviously a Christian Vasquez double. Didn't have that on my Twingo card. But no, otherwise a pretty uninspiring effort from the Twins offense in a series where they had some pretty inspiring offense in the rest of it.
It's a hard box score to read, Dan, because your top 4 hitters, Larnach goes 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Correa goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Miranda goes 0 for 4. Kepler goes 0 for 4 with a strikeout. That's a lot of 0-4s right in a row, Dan.
Yeah, and it's a shame that Lewis had to bat after all of those guys with nobody on base when he does finally hit his home run in his return. He actually didn't get out in this game. He walked as well, so he was kind of the only Twin to do much. I did really like his imitation of Jeter in his first at-bat. He talked about this a little bit later. He put his hand up like Jeter does, though, and times have changed because the ump gave him his time out. He was trying to indicate that, and I guess Royce had a good laugh. It didn't matter because he walked anyway, but I thought it was a nice homage.
It was. Did you notice, Dan, he shaved, Dan, which was a little bit of an interesting choice because, is well known throughout MLB and fandom that to play on the Yankees end, you can't have facial hair. So it's a weird time for him to shave, isn't it?
Fans want an ejection. There he goes. And that was Gardy's gripe.
That is not allowed. How dare you, David?
I'm just saying perhaps he was auditioning for a
We
future
cannot
contract with
insinuate. There will be no insinuating about these sorts of things. Anyway, a couple of things happened in this game. Bottom of the second, Kepler nearly robbed Torres of a home run. It looked like it was in his glove, or at least off of his glove. Trevor Plouffe, who I thought was great on the color all game, on all series on the telecast, he said that's a homer in one ballpark. And he's right. That is the kind of home run that just makes me angry about the Yankees.
It's quite frustrating. 349 was the official measurement, Dan, which is ridiculous. That shouldn't be a home run. That doesn't even sound like a home run figure. Like in the StatCast era where we get every single statistic about every ball hit, every home run we ever see, Dan, never is it 349 and never should it be 349.
No, it shouldn't be. And it's a shame the Twins really weren't able to take a ton of advantage themselves of that short porch. Bailey Ober was okay, but he got himself into a little bit of trouble. There were 2 on with nobody out before Soto and Judge, and this just isn't a recipe for success. It felt like that was kind of what the Twins did all series. Judge, of course, doubled them in. It seems that all he does is hit extra base hits against the Twins here. That gave the Yankees their 3-0 lead. A few other nice plays. Lewis made a great play at third to get Torres out. Actually, upon review, it was a super close play. I was actually kind of surprised that they overturned that. But in the end, it's just Lewis's home run later, and that's really all the Twins were able to do.
We should give a little bit of credit to the Yankees guy on the mound, Heel, a former Twin, Dan. And do you know who we got in return for him?
I do, because it was everywhere on X. It was Jake Cave, of course. Where's our siren? We need our Jake Cave siren here.
Funnily enough, when I put the kids to bed, I usually flip on MLB TV and I'll throw on whatever game is close. And so I've seen a lot of Jake Cave playing for the Rockies, Dan. It's just every time. Last year it was the Phillies or the Angels or the Nationals. All those teams blend together, but I feel like I just can't get away from watching Jake Cave at bats.
I'm not dead.
Can't get rid of Jake.
I don't think he will die, Dan. He's the Highlander. Like there were once many Jake Caves, but he is the one, Dan.
There could be only one Jake Cave.
He is the one.
Jake Cave, the Highlander.
So, all right. So you have a note here in the bottom of the 8th. I'm going to let you talk through this, and then I'm going to criticize you for it.
Okay, well, I'm glad we have a schedule, Dan. It's always good to be nice and prepared. So bottom 8, Thielbar's on the mound, Judge singles, and then Stanton homers on an 0-2 count, Dan. It's a 5-1 game. The game's out of reach at this point. But here's my question, Dan. We argue about this, and what I've tried to express to you over and over again is in 0-2 count, there is no reason you should be giving up a home run. And here's what... let me finish.
Okay, but did you see where that pitch was? It was like at his ankles. And Stanton somehow...
Okay, you clearly didn't look at where the pitch was located because it was nowhere near his ankles. Let's start there.
It was inside. It was not down the middle.
No receipts from Dan Thompson. But we'll talk about... I'm going to talk about the pitch if you would stop interrupting me, Dan Thompson.
All right.
Okay, 0-2 count. You shouldn't be throwing the pitch anywhere near where a guy's going to be able to hit it out for a homer. And so what you were saying is, it's just a mistake. It's just a mistake. If you give your kid a cup of milk and she spills it, you don't yell at her, you don't chastise her, you just, help her make it. No, Dan, that's not true. I scream at my kid when she drops her milk. And what's so funny about this, my subconscious must have been working, Dan, because a couple of nights ago, I kid you not. So she's got a little brother and he was drinking his milk out of a bottle and she's like, hey, can I have some milk? I'm like, sure, kiddo, but you got to stay in the kitchen. So I poured her some milk in a cup, no cover on it, Dan, because you put this thought in my head that this is the way I should be giving milk to my daughter for some reason. And so what do you know? I'm in the bathroom brushing her little brother's teeth. And what happens? But she comes bumbling down the hallway and she spills this milk, Dan. She spills the milk. And you know why she spilled it, Dan? It's not because it didn't have a cover on it, and it's not even a big deal that she spilled it. The issue was, Dan, the only reason she spilled that milk is because she went where she knew she wasn't supposed to. You're supposed to stay in the kitchen when you're drinking milk, Dan. Just like Caleb Thielbar shouldn't be hitting a pitch inside on a guy who has such a closed stance, he could headbutt the umpire, Dan, the way that Giancarlo Stanton stands in that box. So he wants that ball inside because that's how he turns on the ball. It wasn't in his ankles, Dan. It was middle in, right where Stanton loves to pound the ball. It drives me nuts that Hogs is like, I'm on Dan's side too in our text thread. No, 0-2 count, you shouldn't make a mistake like that.
Kiss the cows.
Just lightening the mood a little bit there. That was Joe Mauer, by the way, with his mother on an old ad for that new sounder. Where is he supposed to throw the ball? David, where would you suggest, if you were in Caleb's pitch comm, where would you tell him to throw that pitch?
Down and away, Dan, like any rational human would.
All right. Anyway, Stanton can't be stopped. This Yankees lineup can't be stopped.
Yes, he can. Don't throw it where he's going to hit it into the seats. Okay.
Please attempt to be a gentleman.
Honestly, I don't understand if you're doing this for a bit or just to poke me at this point.
I'm not.
But
I
don't understand. You're like, we shouldn't be frustrated. It's just a mistake. No, the whole point about MLB players, Dan, is that they understand which mistakes to make and how to make them. It's okay if you miss your spot. It's not okay to miss it middle, or middle in on a guy who likes to turn on balls.
Okay, but again, it wasn't over the strike zone. It was outside of the strike zone. What is he supposed to do?
It was inside. I just said, were you even listening
I heard it.
to me, Dan?
I'm moving on. So a couple of things. Aaron Judge was 2 for 3 in this game, 2 RBI and a run. We're going to keep a good tally of Aaron Judge. But let's move on here to game 2, which was, I suppose, an entertaining enough game. The Twins do lose this one, unfortunately, because they lost them all. They lose this one 9-5. They did make a spirited comeback, but they dug themselves a pretty deep hole.
Right off the bat here. Paddock on the mound. I don't know what he's doing. Was he tipping his pitches again, Dan? You think he would have checked the video to make sure he wasn't tipping his pitches again?
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
But when you give up 4 runs in the bottom of the first, Dan, clearly the Yankees came in very comfortably, knowing what they can do against Paddock. Is his stuff just not good enough even when he's not telling them what's coming? I don't understand what's happening here.
I think it's just that the Twins were afraid to pitch to these guys. They were just super careful, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on the game. But yeah, they get 4 in the bottom of the first. They get 4 more in the bottom of the fifth, which is highlighted by a bases clearing triple by Aaron Judge, because that outfield is tricky. The Twins do get a hit finally in the top of the sixth. It's a Carlos Santana opposite field home run, and they do put together another run there on a Correa sac fly. They were trying to still make the comeback here, which I appreciated, but it was this answer. The Yankees always had an answer, right? So the bottom of the sixth, they add a run on 4 walks, no hits, and even though the Twins are able to add another one at the top of the seventh when Royce Lewis hits a home run on his birthday, and Miranda triples and scores, it's still only 9-4, and just, you can't build momentum if you keep giving runs back.
No, and we should mention that Royce Lewis home run, it was the first time in Twins history that a guy has hit a home run in his first 3 games of the season. And it's even more unique, obviously, because there was a month or two between his first home run and his second.
Yeah, just a couple of the notes. In the top of the eighth, the Twins were able to actually get a run on Kyle Farmer had a decent game, at least. He doubled and scored again, this time on a Correa RBI ground out, and Farmer went 2 for 3 in this game. Stamont and Okert actually looked pretty good again late in the game. Aaron Judge 1 for 3 with a triple, 1 walk, 1 run, 5 RBI. Volpe, who I knew you were frustrated about this whole series, 3 for 5, and Stanton 2 for 4. They're just, too many good guys on this team.
As much, I guess I'm already, whatever. I'm off the deep end. I've gone crazy on Twins pitching to begin with. But Paddock, I just hate quotes like this, Dan. So this is what he said, and it bothers me so much. I have to attack the zone. I can't lead off an inning with a walk, then a hit, then another walk to give the bases loaded to Judge, the hottest hitter in the league right now. That's not what you want in that situation. Unfortunately, 7 earned on my line, but I thought I did a lot of great things. Just a tough one to swallow.
That's what he said.
7 earned runs.
He said he thought he did a lot of great things.
A lot of great things. Oh. No, you did. This is what bothers me. I love the first whole half of that statement, Dan, talking about how you made a lot of mistakes, things you can't do. You can't finish it with, I did a lot of great things. 7 earned. I am so upset. I am just so upset. Royce Lewis, we're going to talk, well, no, we'll talk more about Royce Lewis later in a quote that he gave that I absolutely adored, because there's no way Royce Lewis could go 0 for 8, grounding into 6 double plays that he's finishing his statement with, but I did a lot of great things.
Let's go on here to game 3. Well, Pablo didn't look great here. So the Twins lose this game 8-5. It was a rain delayed game. It was a very weird, interrupted, already late game. And so I don't know. Pablo needed to be better here.
Oh, absolutely. We thought he turned it around here with his new pirate beard and his fancy dress coming to the ballpark, but apparently not, Dan. Couldn't figure it out. Only 4 innings pitched, 7 earned runs. It's nice that the team is consistent, though, Dan. Each of the starters giving up 7 earned runs before they leave for the bullpen to come in and clean up their mess. But 6 walks. And that's probably the most concerning, because Pablo doesn't walk guys. Like, he's one of the best in the league of not giving guys free passes, and he has been struggling, Dan. Now, granted, against the Yankees, I can understand it a little bit more. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't pitch to Aaron Judge either. Like, I just wouldn't. I'd just be like, you know what? I'm going to throw 4 balls on the outside, and we'll see what happens. But 6 is too many, Dan, when the rest of the lineup is just as capable of hitting the ball out of the park.
Well, and it was interesting, kind of to your point, that came up a little bit here. So the Twins actually took a lead in this game. Correa hit a home run in the top of the first, so they led for the first time in the series. We will talk more about the bottom of the second when Pablo gave up a 2-run home run there. And then in the top of the third, of course, Christian Vasquez decides to hit a home run to tie the game up. We will talk a lot more about the catching situation later in the episode. But again, bottom of the third, 3 straight walks, a double, a sac fly. Bottom of the fourth, Yankees get a double steal, and then Vasquez's poor throw is actually credited as an error. It's just, you got to play smarter, more sound baseball if you're going to beat the Yankees in their house.
It's not just the offense, right? Like, I think that's what makes this a little bit harder to hate on the Yankees. Granted, I dislike the Yankees greatly, but the tagline on the podcast does say, we appreciate well-played baseball. And when it's not just guys getting up there and hitting homers, but it's guys playing solid defense, it's really hard not to at least express some appreciation for what this team is doing.
Well, and here's the thing. The Twins, again, tried to battle back. Top of the fifth, they get 3 runs, including a Kepler ground rule double that scored Kirilloff. And they're within striking distance, but that was the trend here. They left 11 on base, 2 for 14 with runners in scoring position. Meanwhile, the Yankees are able to add another run in the bottom of the fifth. And then in the top of the seventh, it's that Volpe making great plays.
It just bothers me so much, Dan. You should watch those replays. Honestly, it's worth it to watch it because almost all of them are web gems, Dan.
Yeah, and so the Twins, again, have their chances to tie late in this game or at least get a little bit closer. But yeah, Volpe with great plays in the seventh and the eighth to end those. And this was the one game the Twins kind of controlled. Aaron Judge, 0 for 3 with 2 walks. He still scored twice and struck out once. But yeah, the May player of the month certainly made his presence known. And the funny thing is that I think he was just as effective in this series as he was at Target Field too. It's just the Twins just have no answer for him.
I don't know that many teams do, though,
no,
to be
don't.
fair. I mean, the Twins clearly have otherworldly struggles when it comes to Aaron Judge, but I mean, a lot of other teams do as well, including the fact, I was going to save this for Herbie's headline, but we're talking so much about Judge already. He has more home runs, Dan, at Oracle Park than any Giants players. So that means a guy who, it's not his home ballpark, Dan, and he has more home runs than any other Giant that plays there infinitely more times than Aaron Judge has, Dan.
Well, hey, we need to move forward here to a Puckett's Picks winner segment that I feel really silly about.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett! Puckett's Picks winner.
I felt foolish here. We all had the opportunity to take Royce Lewis, and we didn't. I took Trevor Larnach, who actually finished with 3 points, so I guess that's something. You picked Correa, who had 4. The listeners took Miranda, who came in hot but didn't do much. But it was Hogs who took Lewis, and he had 11 points, which was big because Hogs needed a win.
He did. Now, season standings, I'm still in the lead at 10.5, but Hogs is closing now with 2 victories in a row, including this bonus point, Dan, because Lewis finished highest on the team. Hogs is at 7, Dan's at 3.5, and the listeners are at 2. It is crazy that Hogs picked last, and none of us took Royce Lewis. Do you think there was a little bit of superstition about picking Lewis, like he wouldn't come back if you picked him?
Absolutely. That's what I was worried about. I was worried that he didn't have a great run in AAA. He didn't hit 2 home runs in the week. He needed just a couple days to do it.
Beast versus Bench.
Losing fun? Is losing fun.
Well, I'll take the easy road here, Dan. I'm going to take Royce Lewis. He goes 2 for 6 with 2 home runs. Amazing fielding, a great play at third base. And what I mentioned earlier was this quote. And he basically said, coming into the series, we would love to have 2, right? Like they were hoping to win 2 games. And he was really disappointed in how the team played in the first 2 games. They were hoping to win 1 in game 3. But what he said, Dan, was if I need to go 0 for 8 with 8 strikeouts, I'll do that if it means that the team wins. Like that's just not a guy who I think if he did go 0 for 8, but the team won, again, he's not finishing a quote with, but man, the swing felt really good, you know?
His baseball bat is so long. It's like he's out there playing with like a wiffle ball bat. You know those long yellow bats? Like that's what it seems like he's got out there.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the long wiffle ball bats, Dan.
Sorry. Anyway, my pick is going to be Carlos Santana for his hits in game 2 and 3. Game 2, he saved us from a perfect game, so that was good. And in game 3, he just had a hit. And it just seemed like nobody was consistent here. I thought about Correa, but he was 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts in game 1, so it just kind of felt like he was a little disqualified. But he's kind of one of the veterans that I feel decent about, especially when he's batting 7th, 8th, or 9th.
I don't think it's a bad pick. It's maybe a surprising pick just because he's not a name that has made it to the beast slot too often this season thus far.
Well, as far as bench goes, I went with Chris Paddock. I hadn't even heard the quote that you said before that. So I feel like that's even more of a reason to pick him here. Just not making a great start when the Twins could have needed one. And here's the thing, they had enough offense. If he can just hold him down a little bit more. I mean, we didn't even see the Twins' great bullpen arms. They never had a chance. And maybe game 2 could have been if Paddock had been a little bit better.
Yeah, I think the morale is just dead after the first inning when you're down 4 runs and you're at Yankee Stadium. Down 4 runs against the Tigers. Yeah, you know what? The team probably has some optimism. 4-0 at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. Good luck having any sort of, oh yeah, we're definitely going to come back and win this feeling.
Well, who do you have?
I got to give it to Buxton, and I feel like it's becoming a common trend here. And I feel a little bit bad about this because even last episode I said, I don't even care if he strikes out every at bat as long as he plays a solid center field. Turns out I care. Turns out I care. So he goes 0 for 7 with 3 strikeouts. Just doesn't look comfortable in the box, swinging at pitches that are really low. He's done a little bit better of holding off on outside sliders, which is good to see. But it's sort of like he's just changed to be like, well, change ups and stuff in the dirt I'm going to swing at. But those outside pitches, you're definitely not going to fool me with those.
We're still waiting for the Buxton turnaround, that's for sure. Well, hey, we got things to talk about with Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
I'll go first. I'm wondering this is were the pitchers told to dance around the zone? You know, and there was a situation in one of these games where I think it was game 3 where Aaron Judge walked with the bases loaded, you know, almost the Barry Bonds treatment where it was like, we're better off just kind of letting him walk. And they did get the out on the next batter, but 18 walks in the series. And we saw this when they were at Target Field too. It just seems like the Twins pitchers were afraid to challenge these guys. It's like, did you forget last year the Twins won this season series 4-3? Like, it's not like you can't beat the Yankees.
Last year you could beat the Yankees. I understand what you're saying, that like maybe they told the pitchers to be a little bit more timid and not give these guys stuff to hit. But if they truly said that, Dan, why did they get hit as many times as they did?
Well,
on top of the 18 walks.
And again, the Yankees are really good. They're the best team in the American League. This is, you know, by Yankee standards, this is just a really complete team right now. So, but you still want to win one. And I think given the fact that their bats did come alive in games 2 and 3, you just kind of would have hoped they could have gotten one good start, especially with a guy like Pablo Lopez on the mound who looked so good. So I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking. What about you?
Yeah, I have a question. Why is Vasquez getting starts over Jeffers here? I know we're going to talk about the catching situation a little bit later, but that's my first question to Rocco. I hope it was just Jeffers was like, hey, I need a day, as opposed to, no, this is the better choice. Now, again, I feel so silly saying this because Vasquez had an okay series when he made, you know, he's the only guy actually getting hits, but that's just not the norm. Like, I mean, it's very anecdotal, one-off. You wouldn't normally choose Vasquez 2 out of 3 games against the Yankees. But what I really want to say to Rocco is the umpiring in game 1 and game 2 were both rough games from an umpiring perspective. And it would have been nice to see Rocco get a little upset, get tossed, do something to help energize this team. We haven't really seen that yet this season, and I just hate to see Rocco sort of fall back into the comfort chair that is Rocco's lack of emotion. I know that that's not exactly who you are as a person, but my goodness, sometimes as a manager, you got to do something to light a fire here. You can't just always wait for the next player-only meeting.
I mean, we saw Chris Finch do that for the Timberwolves, you know, when he was kind of hobbled and came back in. I think that can work. I think at least going out there and making your presence known and kind of standing up for your guys, it just seemed like they were dispirited about this series. Now, we'll see if they bounce back against the Pirates, but and maybe that's why they were having Vasquez catch a couple, because they want to have Jeffers maybe catch 2 or even 3 in Pittsburgh.
Could be. With that, Dan, let's go on to Minnesota Moment.
Minnesota Moment.
I mean, it has to be Lewis's game 1 home run. I think the excitement that we felt, at least at that moment, kind of erased the fact that they did not win that game and only had 2 hits. But to see him back doing Royce Lewis things, it almost makes me wonder, gosh. Well, it does make me wonder. I'm wondering it now. What could this team have done with him the last 2 months? And what could this team do for the next 3 or 4 with him?
It's a fair question, and I think everybody's asking, okay, what's this guy's WAR in actuality? Is it like 3 per every 3 games? Like, because that's how it feels again. It just feels like he's the guy. He's the guy. And I know everyone's like, well, is it Correa's team? Is it Buxton's team? No, it's Royce Lewis's team. Like, step aside. He's here. He's the guy. He's him. And I'm just excited, and I want him to stay healthy. I just want all 3 of those guys to stay healthy, and I want Buxton to remember how to hit. That's what I would like for Christmas, Dan.
Gosh, you say that it's his team, and at first I want to say, whoa, that's bold, but it is. It's just the way that he carries himself. It's the way that he talks. It's all of those things that he just does.
Small sample size, though, Dan.
Yeah. See, it is. Look at you. Look at you drinking the Kool-Aid.
I know. I hate this. I have been possessed I don't understand it, but like you guys talk Lewis up so much in my head that it's an earworm, Dan, and it's stuck in there and I can't get it out. And now look at me. It's like a cult that you guys have brought me into that I've said the mantra enough that Royce Lewis is the guy that I'm actually starting to believe it, Dan. Do you want me to make some corn husk dolls later too? Is that on the docket?
He's the one.
Costanza.
Same
thing. Well, speaking of, anyway, I'm going to play this sounder here because I feel like I haven't had a chance yet, but it seems apt for what you're about to say.
All rise for Dan's Judge Love.
And if I could insert David into that, I feel like you've been praising him as much as I have this series.
Well, hang on. What I'm doing here in the Minnesota moment is not a positive, Dan. Is that how you read this note? No.
Well, yeah.
I said the Minnesota moment was every time Judge came up to bat because he absolutely destroyed, Dan. He absolutely destroyed this Twins team every time he came up to the bat, and that just really encapsulated the season series, Dan. Every time that man came up to the plate, it was like, well, how is he going to hurt us now? But if I had to choose one moment, it has nothing to do with Aaron Judge, actually. It has to do with the man, Dan, in Game 3, the bottom second, Pablo Lopez gives up a home run to Trent Grisham, who is John's brother. I don't know if you're familiar, Dan, but he's batting .071, and he hits a home run, Dan. I don't understand. Pablo Lopez, you're letting a number 9 batter hit a homer off you after hitting the number 7 batter. What are you doing?
One might call him, David, the Rainmaker.
It's like a pun. It's a play on words.
I do get it.
It's not even, it's barely a pun. If that Rainmaker, folks, is a John Grisham novel, I guess. Wow. We should be writing, Dan, for network television.
Oh, man. And it was interesting because I was listening on the radio at that point. I think it was Paul Molitor, too, and he was saying that it was the hit by pitch 2 batters before that really kind of allowed that to happen. It does make you wonder, if Pablo doesn't do that, does that change the course of the rest of the game? And maybe it does. I mean, those are 2 runs there that the Yankees don't have. That's a much closer game.
It'd still be a 1-0 lead for the Twins, which would be really fun to say they had for more than 1 inning, Dan.
Now, David, surely you know when something is the OG, it's special. It's the original. It's where it all started. And that's what OG Zaza Pizza is. It's pizza as it was meant to be. Located inside Potluck Food Hall at Rosedale Center, OG Zaza serves up New Haven-style pizzas, Caesar salad, and big-ass breadsticks that are literally 2 feet long. For the month of June, all pizzas are $10 after 5 p.m. every day of the week. You heard that right, just $10. So stop in, tell them Min for the Win sent you, and take advantage of this delicious deal.
Ooh, I think I might head over there tomorrow, Dan. Right around 5 o'clock, I bet. But with that, let's go on to Mauer's Musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's Musings.
Why don't you go first, Dan, because yours is more like realistic, I think, as far as something that could be on the table shortly.
So the Twins have a catching prospect, Yair Camargo, I believe is how you say his name, and he's been kind of on the injured list, but he's back and healthy, and I think that the Twins have themselves a little bit of a conundrum. He was up on the roster a little bit earlier, but at some point, what do you do here? Because if Vasquez is going to continue to bat around 400 OPS, right? We're not talking batting average. Do you have to make a change just for the sake of the fact that this is a competitive playoff quality team right now?
I think it gets so tricky because they're paying him so much dang money and because they have him through next season, Dan.
Right.
And I don't know, can you really do that? Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do with Jeffers, Vasquez, and then Camargo also on the roster. Who's getting the playing time? It should be Jeffers, but Jeffers hasn't exactly been lights out as of late either. But I don't know that giving Vasquez more starts is the answer. I think that bringing in a third set of hands, Dan, might be a spark to this team getting some offensive production out of a catching position that we just haven't had in a while now.
The problem with that is that you can't send anybody down right now. And I agree with you in the sense that, like, they're not going to cut Vasquez. I don't think they're cutting Farmer either anytime soon. And again, glad to see these guys playing better this series, but it's just not realistic. It's going to take an injury, and we don't want that. So I think we're stuck with this, and then they're hopefully going to play, well, I don't say hopefully, they're just playing the long game in terms of the development of guys like him.
You know, maybe there will be a Miguel Sano mysterious leg injury to Christian Vasquez for a little bit to give Camargo a chance.
I'm just surprised we haven't seen that yet. And you know, maybe, well, you have another question that I think relates to this.
Yeah, so right now, Royce Lewis came up, Eddie Julian got sent down. Let's assume that Kyle Farmer has to go on the IL. Brooks Lee is healthy. He's playing. He's been moved up to AAA. Eddie Julian, it's a little too early to tell whether he's figured anything out. He's only been down for a few games now. But who are you calling up, Dan, if tomorrow it comes out that Farmer, attended a parade and cut himself on a pipe, who are you calling up? Are you calling
Cut himself on a pipe at a parade?
Well, yeah, that was one of the Miguel Sano injuries. Your memory, Dan, did you
sorry,
maybe
you're
we
right.
got to get you a 5-hour energy or something.
I forgot all the odd injuries that Miguel Sano sustained. Well, okay, first quick note. Eddie Julian, on the first pitch that he saw at AAA, hit a home run to opposite field.
Oh, Canada.
So I think Eddie Julian still got it in some capacity. I think if it's another week or two, though, and let's say Brooks Lee is playing well, I think they'd give Brooks Lee a chance just to kind of see if he's the next guy they can partner with Royce Lewis and Carlos Correa on this infield.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to see a new guy. And honestly, I think Julian just needs some time to figure it out and understand that he can hit off-speed stuff. Like, he has drastically dropped in his production on off-speed pitches from last season to this season. And it's funny that, that's a pretty common trope among rookie guys coming into their sophomore season. But it's one of those things they got to figure out sometime. Sometimes it just takes a couple of games at AAA to figure it out. But one other quick question, Dan. I just have to mention this. The Twins have not won a game against the Orioles, the Yankees, or the Guardians. Now, they have won one against the Dodgers, so I guess that's saying something. But Dan, if this team makes no changes and makes no additions at the trade deadline, which seems to be likely the case, do they have any shot to even be competitive in the postseason against any of these teams?
Yeah, you give them time. You give Royce Lewis a little bit more time to be in the lineup, and I think that it's possible. Like, for example, you look back at that Guardian series, I think if Royce Lewis is in that lineup, the Twins are able to win a game. But they need guys like Buxton to play better. They need Correa to keep doing what he's doing. And then they need some of these young guys to step up. They need Kirilloff to play better. They need Kepler to go on another tear. They need Jeffers to return. But are we asking too much, too many guys to be in peak form? Because that's not realistic either.
Well, I don't know. You're more optimistic than I am. But the more that we see this team play and the more times we see them beat mediocre and middling teams but lose to the high teams, you said this a few episodes ago, Dan, maybe that's just what this team is. They're a 9th or 10th best team in the majors, and that's where their ceiling is. Right
now it looks like the third wild card will get whoever wins the AL West, and that's not a great division right now, so I think they could at least win a playoff series even if that's where they land. But we got 100 baseball games left still, so we'll see where they're at.
Series grades.
Well, I got to give them an F, Dan. And honestly, I want to give them a lower grade, but you can't really give them a lower grade. I was going to ask you as the teacher, can you fail if you're auditing a class? Because that's sort of what I feel like the Twins did here. They didn't even really enroll in the series. They were just there to sort of soak up the knowledge of watching the Yankees play baseball, and they still couldn't even do that.
No, I don't think you get a grade if you're auditing the course, but that's a pretty good comparison there. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm actually going to draw inspiration off of a friend of yours who sent some mail into our podcast.
Min for the Win mailbag.
Of course nobody needs mail.
It's like a sounder within a sounder, a segment within a segment, David. So was it your friend? Is it his name Andy?
Yeah, a longtime buddy of mine. So he listens to your grading segment, Dan, and every week I think there's been just this little noise in the back of his mind saying he needs to do better with this advanced retreat metric. And so he sent us a very well thought out schematic, Dan, for how you ought to be using your advanced retreat out of 10 system.
Yeah, so basically he breaks down if it's a 4-game series, a 3-game series, a 2-game series, and then whether the Twins are playing a team above 500 or below 500, and then he kind of grids that out into a score, which I think you can probably imagine. So this is a 3-game series. They went 0-3 against a team above 500, so he thinks this should be a 0 or a 1, and I can't agree more. I think that's wise. I'm going to give him the 1, right? Because I saw signs of life that you seem to have ignored in this game and in this series. So a 1 out of 10 there. But the well-played baseball, they didn't pitch very well. They didn't hit timely, so that's a 4 out of 10, a 5. I mean, again, this is another one of those things where you look at student work, you're like, I asked for 800 words and you gave me 200. No, it's not passing. This is an F.
Not enough. Well, let's go on to Herbie's headlines. Some stuff that's been happening around the league, Dan.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
So we actually got 2 notes about betting, which I feel like every episode we could talk about betting. There's so much infiltration in betting in sports now.
Sponsored by FanDuel.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. One thing we should talk about is that
DraftKings.
I know. So Padres
Have
utility.
you placed your bet on underdog?
Can I please? All right, we get it. For the record, we are not sponsored by FanDuel. We never will be. Padres utility man Tucupita Marcano was banned from baseball for betting, and he actually wasn't with the Padres at the time. But he's not a good bettor, David. He lost a lot of money.
What was it? He hit on 4.2% of his bets.
Yeah, it wasn't good. But the more serious point here, obviously, is that this is a problem. This is what happens when you open up sports betting to everyone in so many places now. You're going to have this pop up, and it may not be stars, but it's going to be guys who are trying to make a career out of it. It's just sad to see, these kind of decisions. And obviously, this is his call. He made these choices, and we get that too. But I don't like that it's so easy right now for players to do this. We're going to see a lot more of this. I mean, some other guys that were involved with this are minor leaguers or kind of fringe guys. I mean, this is going to end a lot of careers for players, and that's too bad.
Yeah, and you do wonder how often it's going to be a guy sort of nonchalantly, like literally just on one of these websites we were talking about, just placing a couple of bets without even really fully thinking through the ramifications of like, oh, this could make it so I can't play baseball anymore. Like, because it seems like such a minor thing, and especially when you can do it from your phone, Dan. It's not like you have to call a bookie or go to an off-track betting warehouse somewhere, right? Like, you can do it from your smartphone in 30 seconds, and it's just too easy nowadays, Dan.
Yeah, so it's too bad. We talked a bit about Ohtani earlier. He's been fully cleared of charges. And then also, a former Twin alert, Brent Rooker is just raking with the A's.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up on a postseason team, Dan, because I think he'll be traded at the deadline from the A's. But it is sad to see all of these Twins guys. I didn't even mention the back half of that Jake Cave thing. Jake Cave is also the reason why they got rid of Lamont Wade Jr., because they wanted to keep Cave as a fourth outfielder. I don't even know. Can you find me a metaphor, Dan? I won't even give you the sounder. If you can find me a metaphor for somebody who you've hung on to for so long, they keep causing you pain, Dan.
Well, let me think. He's kind of like a Dodge Stratus, like you're very content to have that vehicle because it kind of gets the job done. But in the end, there's nothing flashy or glamorous or great about a Dodge Stratus.
Ogres are like onions. End of story.
What?
I
What's
lied.
wrong with
That was terrible. That was a terrible, and I was thinking, you're an English teacher. There must be stories of people who fell in love with the wrong person and it ended up hurting them in the long run. And I'm thinking, oh, he must have a whole bunch of, maybe he's going to quote a Keats poem or something. No, what does Dan do? Jake Cave is kind of like a Dodge Stratus.
I thought that's what you wanted. I thought you wanted something that people would understand. It's a Will Ferrell comment from SNL. Anyway, all right, David.
Wait, a Dodge Stratus thing is a Will Ferrell thing?
Yeah, it's the whole, he's a dad and he's trying to assert control over his family, and he says, I drive a Dodge Stratus. You don't remember this line?
No.
Anyway.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better about the metaphor that you give, but you still get the sounder, Dan.
All right. Anyway, can we move on?
No. One more note here, Dan. Andrew McCutchen recently had an interview, and they brought up the fact that his first home run, Dan, was in the Metrodome, which is just crazy to think about, isn't it?
Wow, he's been playing that long. Go figure. And we're about to go see him play, I believe, for the Pirates here in this next series.
I'm not dead.
That's true. He's not. He's 37. He's still going. So anyway, that is a good segue into our next segment.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's Picks.
Well, the listeners, Dan, unsurprisingly, are going to take Royce Lewis.
You were the chosen one.
But he is the chosen one, Dan. He is the chosen one. I can no longer deny it. I am fully on board with the Royce Lewis is the greatest Twin to ever play the game. I will be leading that train from here on out. And then you're up next, Dan.
Yeah, so I'm trying to put up a big number. I'm going to go with Buxton. I know he didn't have a great series, but I'm hoping he comes alive.
He didn't have a great several series, Dan. It's been a little bit here since Buxton has put up the numbers. That comes to me, then. I'm going to take Correa. And then Hogs, who in his infinite wisdom took Royce Lewis last time, stuck fourth pick. And he's going to take Miranda. His faith is not shaken.
I am not throwing away my shot.
He's still on the team. He's still on the team. All right. Hogs, by the way, is going to be at this series. He's not going to see Paul Skeens with the Pirates. We will hear from him, not next episode, but the next couple. So I'm eager to hear how he thinks of that field, PNC Park. I've heard it's really beautiful. One of the best in baseball. And I think with that, David, I think it's your turn to send us out.
I will do. Thank you. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Men for the Win and find our Men for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so that you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. Link in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kuvas and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.